is going to be environmental issues linked to the global shift of industry. So the subtopics are polluting manufacturing industries and food production systems for global agribusiness. So first of all, let's look at the shift of manufacturing industries. So since the 1970s, there's been a global shift of heavy and light industry away from Northern Europe and Eastern USA to locations in Asia, such as China, India, Thailand, Singapore, and Indonesia. China now ranks second in industrial output, and 44% of its gross domestic product comes from secondary industry. In addition to the industries mentioned, China also produces armaments, computer equipment, automobiles, cement, and consumer goods such as toys. Heavy industry has traditionally been one of the main sources of pollution in the world. India has shown tremendous growth in its industrial output, producing many of the goods mentioned for China. It has also experienced huge growth in GDP and has been starting to outpace China's growth in the last 5 years. The world's economy has been very dependent on growth in these two Asian giants. Manufacturing has shifted to Asia because of the cost of labor being much lower, so it's less cost per unit, and Asian governments are more willing to allow for joint ventures of local and international companies. There's cheap and plentiful power supplies. Asian governments want to modernize and provide higher standards of living. There's also been the liberalization of capital markets, which has risen globally on average over the past decades, and few restrictions due to regulations on safety and emissions. So here are some of the environmental issues caused by manufacturing industries in China. I'm just going to summarize them as it's quite a lot of information. Okay, well, basically in China, a lot of factories pollute the water, making it undrinkable, and the government regulations tend to be not very strict, and that allows for the dumping of chemical waste into rivers. Wastewater and sewage has also been released into lakes and rivers without any treatment, and that means the water can't really be used for anything else. Also, China's underground water is largely polluted, and there's lots of sites in which the underground water quality is very poor, that impacts drinking water and just water supply in general, because the citizens of China have to boil their water and have these extra processes to actually drink it. It also affects the soil, that leads to contaminated soil with heavy metals inside of it, which is not good for agriculture either. Then there's air pollution. So many industrial cities in China suffer from very poor air quality, Beijing being one of the most affected. So a major source is cars, and also from industry, dust storms, and use of coal for energy. And this creates a huge health hazard and poor quality in air quality indexes, where there's lots of different oxidants, sulfur dioxide and ozone in the air, particulate matter as well, which can actually get into the bloodstream and cause lots of respiratory illnesses such as bronchitis and emphysema. Also been a cause of transboundary pollution for South Korea and Japan, and even the Pacific coast of the US. And then finally some of the policy they have. So in 2014, China passed new laws to fine companies guilty of dumping chemicals into water, and new laws regarding emission controls on factories. However, they are said to not be very enforced. The country also endorsed the Paris Agreement on climate change. The Greenpeace officials noted that the Chinese environmental laws were good, as those in any other country in the world, but they wondered if the laws could actually be enforced at a local level. Now we'll look at food production. So agribusiness is the production of food for profit and involves farm machinery, seeds, fertilizers, and pesticides, processing, as well as the sale and retail of food. So agribusiness was founded in colonial times, where there were huge MNCs such as the Dutch East India Company, which controlled the European supply of spices from its plantations in Indonesia, and the British East India Company, which grew cotton and tea in India and then shipped it back to Britain from the 17th to 19th centuries. So now a few MNCs control food systems, large scale, and they will use economies of scale. So basically, agribusiness has led to a huge control of a few companies over the global food systems, and that can lead to unfair issues for smaller farms, and the increase in global flows between places mean that farm goods no longer stay in the country of origin, but are shipped across the world to meet the demands of the consumer. Okay, Now we're going to look at impacts and implications of agribusiness. So agribusiness in dairy farming means nitrates in local water sources, which make it unsafe for drinking. Reliance on feed crops that are heavily sprayed with pesticides, so a lot of animals die because of these chemicals. And other farmers, particularly undocumented immigrants, fear deportation if they complain against these large companies. The impact of a family farmer livelihood who can only milk so many cows. They cannot reach the low costs that the agribusinesses have. Cows are also crammed into cubicles and fed chemically treated feed and water, so it's not the animal welfare is quite low. Also have to take into account social and environmental costs. Then for agribusiness in palm oil production, it mostly comes from Indonesia and Malaysia, and 71,000 football fields are thought to be burnt daily. There's deforestation, loss of natural habitats, extinction of rhino, leopard, and orangutan populations. Only 50,000 young orangutans are left in the wild. In Indonesia, palm oil companies drain the peat of the forest, making it very flammable and susceptible to releasing more carbon dioxide. It also contributes to the Southeast Asian haze. The palm oil would need to be replaced by other types of vegetable oil. Other sources such as rapeseed and soybeans yield 4 to 10 times less oil per unit of land, and that requires much more fertilizers and pesticides. Also, switching away from palm oil would actually mean more land and more deforestation. So essentially, people need to buy certified products by the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil, which is already being used by Nestle, Unilever, Waitrose, and Sainsbury's too.